you're live.
Morning. We call the meeting of the Commission on Ethics, Lobbying, and Government. Second, do we have a forum?
We do. We have a forum between the attendees here in Albany, in the Commission's offices. I should say the meeting is being held pursuant to notice and in accordance with the provisions of the state's Open Meetings Law and Executive Law, Section 94. Both the meeting room we're using here at the New York State Conference Center at 25 Beaver Street in Manhattan, and the conference room we're using today is the Commission's offices in Albany, on Broadway. Session and public session is also being live streamed, and the link can be found on our website at ethics.ny.gov. Note too that Vice Chair Ayers and Commissioner Caraballo are attending remotely pursuant to the Public Officers Law.
Vice Chair Ayers is in the Albany.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in the Albany office, so not.
Right, you're in
not
the Albany
actually
office. All right.
removed in that sense.
Commissioner Caraballo, and at some point of the meeting, Commissioner Austin are attending, will be attending remotely by video conference pursuant to Public Officers Law, Section 103-A, and the Commission will attend resolution for remote participation on account of extraordinary circumstances. And again, with the board.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes, public session, June 24th. Are there any corrections? There being none, I'll ask for motion.
I'm sorry, there was one correction I think I sent it to Executive Director and General Counsel St. John. There was a correction on page 5. This was sent in by Commissioner Scott on page 5 under legislative update. It's the last sentence, just clarifying that it should say additional proposals, not more proposals. So the sentence should read, Chief foresees Coley adding more additional proposals to next year's agenda.
And I have a change as well.
What was the question?
I have a change on page 10, the last paragraph. It says that I abstained because the proposal, I thought the proposal was unclear. The proposal was unclear to her, it should read. Please.
Okay, and then Commissioner Harris has a section on page 6. Under the heading of March, April preliminary lobbying data report, it is a little bit more than halfway through. The sentence that says, starts with Chief of Staff DeSantis noted that to better illuminate that phenomenon, a chart has been added to the preliminary report for March, April, and will be included in future reports detailing the clients on his behalf. The bulk of those expenses have been paid or incurred. Word been needs to be added.
As corrected, can I have a motion? Second, Commissioner Paris. Second, Commissioner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we'll have a report from staff.
Thank you. Call the Commission's attention to the operations. The agenda book, again, I'm going to only touch on highlights. If any commissioners have any questions, please, staff is here to answer them, whether at the meeting or after the meeting. Page 1, investigations and enforcement. You'll see open and pending is a total of 238. That continues to run substantially lower than a year ago. It's 260. So net decrease in open investigations for the low 50s. Page 2, advice and guidance. The numbers continue to run comparatively high, running a little bit lower than last month. Oddly identical to a year ago, as a couple of months now we're breaking out miscellaneous, including financial stuff. And outside activities, working the lead. Followed by post-employment and conflict of interest inquiries. Well, lobbying, division at page 3. June was not about what's been reporting months, so the numbers are relatively low. But the inquiries are running comparatively high, especially for by low or clients in the end. A very modest increase in the number of registered lobbyists and clients. Financial disclosure, some updates. As of this morning, outstanding filings from the May 13th filing. And to 1,000. So again, that's tribute to the work that we've headed by the director of FPS has been doing. Also an update, legislative candidate filings outstanding as of this morning down to 45. Rating figures, a little bit of an update. The total on combined total workforce numbers, that's for trainings by our training team, by ethics officers, live CTC training, and on demand. The total is now 18,245. Year to date, so we have a monthly increase to 91,021. We're not there, we're a little bit better than half of what we need to be in order to hit the target this year of 85% trained. Workforce of 330,000 plus. Next page, clients audit and review the numbers are something. Another good months. Over 200, 202 combined random target reviews of initial slope statements and audits of clients. Making good progress, and we were on track to exceed 2,200. I'd like to give it up for the 400 for the year. That brings us to communications. Very, very busy month for Emily and her group. 37 FOIL responses responded to, over 2,000 pages produced. The number of impressions is substantial. A lot of reasons last one. So part of that's the annual report.
And the videos. Sorry.
There was letters that went out on both sides. And it's the operations update. Any questions? The next tab. See budget report. Now we have our cash flow identical to last year. 8 million. We'll see we're projecting virtually no surplus. Set previously. We're getting here for full confidence. 68 effective positions. So we're looking at more like 64, possibly 63. Again, you're not seeing yet in the personal services part of the budget 48% PSI is going to cost this year. Performance advances. Those are not going to actually hit retroactively, but we'll have to pay it out. They won't hit until the payment is approved by the legislature. We're assuming that sometime in the fall. So you'll see spending projections in October. There's a bump up in spending. It's the GSI is coming in. advances. For Diem payments, D, the total for June payment, July 15th, $10,209.08. It covers the June 24 commission meeting, May 27 commission meeting for one commissioner, prep time for March, April, and May for some commissioners. The year, and this is posted, available. Year-to-date total now is $44,543.36, and we're within budget. Questions? That brings us to staffing update. We are currently recruiting for a number of positions in the agency. We're actively recruiting for 2 investigators, one in Albany, one in the New York office. We're recruiting for grade 11 position, against the disclosure unit, and we're recruiting for data analyst or specialist at the administrative level in the training unit. We are not at this point recruiting for a trainer in the education unit. We had planned to be an audit position. We're holding off on that. And we're holding off for now. I think that investigation unit. Any questions?
That training position in education.
We don't know. It's really going to depend on how our employment situation evolves over the years. Since it was over the year, and looking into the future. Although we ultimately got our full budget request, we're not anticipating, I think no one was anticipating, the 4.5% GSI as opposed to 3.5%. And that's really pushing us back. Going forward, as vacancies open in the agency, on a case-by-case basis, we're going to make a judgment about whether to fill that vacancy. Some of the other positions that we have, we'll make a judgment based on need. Right now, and we're down, our staffing, we have 2 positions, 3 positions overall in the training. So once we bring that in,
Down 3 positions now.
we're down,
Plus, we're not.
no, that's not plus, that's including.
So we're down.
So
3
so
positions.
we're down 3 because the trainer resigned. So we're in the process of filling that position. It's possible that the individual who resigned may come back to the agency. That would be very helpful for us. That means we would have a learning training curve, getting the person into the room. I mean, one issue we're having in the training room is that trainers are having to do double duty data entry, because we haven't been able to build data entry. I think we're in the process of identifying an individual. I'd like to see that person who we think the requisite skill set for it. Once we bring a person in to fill that position, that will take some of the burden off the trainers that we now have. The group has been doing quite well in conducting training sessions. We're getting better involvement of agencies and having their people sign up for our classes. They're still not all completely subscribed. On that part of the operation, we look okay. but we'll have to make a judgment as we move forward and see if the additional trainer is going to be the most impactful position to fill, both in that group and in the agency.
Two questions. What does the staff production represent in terms of percentage of trainings that you have now? And will the production of restaff impact, well, how will it impact outcomes?
The goal is to be down to 1, not 3.
Well,
So
there were 3 vacant.
There are 3 vacant.
Yeah.
One with 2 are filling.
Okay.
One is caused by resignation, so we're filling that. Hopefully that person will come back. If not, we have other candidates who did review. We want to fill the admin position. So there'll only be 1 vacancy. What's,
See, that shouldn't impact objectives. That should not be impacted.
we'll see. I don't want to make a final judgment on it, but in terms of the output of our training, we'll talk about that a little bit. Everybody now has the draft of the annual report. So you can see what the numbers are. The training group has been able to increase the number and the trainings they're conducted in the individuals they can have. And so they're projecting that they can train as many as 60,000.
That reflects a full staff, right? The report reflects a full staff.
That reflects their capacity. No, I think it reflects their capacity. What we will have will restore that training. But let's see, and it may be that we need to go to a higher number than 60,000 in order to hit our targets for each of the next 3 years. We'll go to 85%, 90, 95 to 100% when we get there. And it may be we have to increase that. That's where we'll have to put more attention.
Sandy,
We're going to have to juggle.
with the person you hope may come back, do you have a timeline of, you'll know if that person is making a commitment or not?
I don't have the timeline. Don't know. Audrey, do we have a potential timeline?
Don't know that we have a potential timeline yet because I think we still need to go through approval processes. So that's what we'd be waiting on.
Okay. But there's still, we'll have to go through the BDA process. I assume it's not going to be as complicated as it typically is to bring.
To just bring her back, it's a backfill, so it should go quickly.
What's the timeline for determining whether the person lives?
I think that'll be quick. I think staff might just be waiting on the official go-ahead.
To say it differently, it sounds like the person has committed. I mean, if the person is going through the process itself.
I think there's still some discussions happening.
Right. Yes, they're very interested. They
They're very-
wanted to know if we were interested. We're interested. I think we just need to put the final thought on that and then we'll submit.
Yeah, I mean, we had made some changes to the position, so we may have to do some unwinding of the changes we were planning to do with the position, bring the individual back. We can, we don't get to do that. But that was sketched out. But again, we will have flexibility as we go forward. We've been discussing this now almost 2 years with DO. Every agency has a level of attrition. And DOB's view of budgeting takes into account certain vacancies rate at agencies. We have tended to be above that rate. But fewer vacant positions, those we've had have been the result of, not that we haven't been able to find people to fill our positions, it's the delay in getting things in the TOB. But as we move through the year, we make adjustments if necessary. But positions I've had, positions for positions. And that is backfilling that training position and getting another position. Any other questions? With that, we'll go to attachment E. Keith St. John, of General Counsel, monitors all proposed legislation that could impact the agency. He's got a wrap up from the latest legislative session. Keith?
Good morning, everyone. Yes, what you've got, that wrap up, is a sort of zoomed out perspective on legislation that was considered or not by each of the houses of the state legislature. I coin it as a zoom out because I know that you heard a presentation at last month's meeting from Emily DeSantis with regard to the specific bills on our legislative agenda, the agency's legislative agenda, and those bills that did advance either through the normal legislative process or through the budget enactment process several months ago. This is, as I say, a larger view of bills that I was tracking that I anticipated could have some impact on the agency's operations or just substantively concern topics that would be of interest to members of the commission. So it's here for your general edification.
All right, thank you, Keith. Any questions? And some of these bills that Keith said have been on our agenda and talked about previously. Others are independent of that.
Actually, I have a question on page 4. We have a bill, the Assembly from McMahon, and the Senate from Mayor. They appear to be the same. Are they the same?
You're asking about Senate Bill 9603 and which other one?
Assembly Bill 7552.
What page is that Assembly Bill on? The page. Well, okay, I've got 3.
They're companion.
It looks like there's.
Yep, yes, they appear to be companion bills, and apparently they've died in each house. The Assembly Bill at least was reported out of committee, but died on the Assembly calendar, and similarly, the Senate Bill was reported out of committee, but died on the Senate calendar. So there was some advancement, but not total in either of the 2 houses on that legislation.
Okay. Next item, what is item 5? Recommission. Oh, actually, there's no chair report. I don't think there's no administration report. Is there? Wrong way?
No, there isn't. There is not.
Education, there.
Just a quick point, we submitted to the commission last week copies of the 2025 training compliance report that we're obligated to submit to the governor and the legislative body. Hope you had the opportunity to review it. I'm going to ask Sandy to give you a 3 to 4 minute briefing on it. And if you have any questions or concerns, now is the time to raise them.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. We'll try to do this very quickly. It's an impressive report. It covers all of 2025. Required to issue an annual report detailed by agency on their mandatory ethics. And we're also supposed to report statistics of legislature. We've included as well first quarter of 2026 in the report. That's a higher level report, more summary, statute. You've heard these statistics in our various operations reports, but here they're collected all together. Major 2025 accomplishments are over 210,000 executive branch employees attended live ethics training in 2025. 56,000 plus attended on demand. So that's a total of 267,000. Received training. That's a little bit over 81% of the total workforce. Based on our calculation, roughly 330,000 executive branch employees, and we talked about this before, that leaves about 63,000 employees who didn't receive either on-demand or live training in 2025. Some of whom did not receive live or on-demand training, ethics training in 2024. And we've talked about giving priority attention to having those individuals trained. With respect to live trainings conducted by our group, number of sessions, 158 by the corporate training team. We have 30,874 completions. That's a huge increase in the number of individuals our group is training. Statewide, ethics officers and trainers delivered 7,200 live CTC trainings. Also a substantial increase in the number of trainings. We're now able to track over 330,000 employees. We have contact information for a little better than half, 177,000. The data that we get generally does not include email addresses, so we have to obtain those from official email addresses from various sources. The team is developing strategies for obtaining contact information so we can reach out directly to those individuals. The CETC course has been approved for continuing legal education credit, so attorneys in the state workforce can have CLE. CETC had received 2 ethics credits. So another attractive, not the vast numbers I would have hoped for, but 200 so far. 2025. We'll probably get more traction in 2026. So far, from the initial launch of the on-demand ethics training for lobbyists and clients, almost 13,000, 12,780 lobbyists and clients. Ethics training, we're now in the second triennial period, it's a 3-year cycle, started in 2023 under NYCRR. We're now in the second triennial. As we discussed previously, notifications have gone to over 10,000. The trainings are taking place. You saw the statistic in this monthly operations figures. We're getting there. It's over 3,000 who received training. They have a way to go. And the cycle will become a 2-year cycle beginning of next year, 2027. Calendar year 2027. If you look at the quarterly data, page 5 of the report, in terms of CETC completions, you can see the fourth quarter total is equal to the first 3 quarters of the year. There's a bolus of activity, compliance activity at the end of the year in that last quarter. That keeps our training team busy, that keeps ethics officers busy. The team is trying very, very hard to change the ethos across the agencies so that we don't have a bolus of activity that's scrambling to get training done. And the strain that it puts, not so much on our training, but because we can scale up, but on the agencies that are doing the bulk of the training. So that is 2025. In terms of statistics, a lot of other things have happened. On-demand ethics refresher training has become available on multiple platforms. And online certification, so those who take on-demand don't have to print out to sign it. Scanning it to their ethics officers. We've dealt with accessibility issues. We have an ASL CETC version. We have real-time closed captioning with American Sign Language, multi-language simultaneous translations available. panoply of things, so we're working on that. Additional training on CETA's capabilities, the statewide ethics training application have been expanded. We have better metrics available. And as I said, we have improved outreach to lobbyists and clients to get them retrained. May 26, Q1, good deal of pushing on the priority population. As a result of that pushing and direct outreach, over 9,000 in the recalcitrant population. Still a smaller fraction than what we'd like. So received training, we're pushing hard on that. And statistics to date for the first quarter are 70,000. Courses completed, 34,755. Instructor-led and on-demand, 12,453. So that's moving. And unless there are any questions, we can go back to the report, the inception to date total, we'll just give you that. Over 620,000 on trainings have been completed through the end of 2025. So it's an impressive number, almost twice the workforce, but we need to be doing better. Any questions? And we anticipate releasing the reports to the governor and to legislative leadership this week. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please let us know.
I just wanted to say that I hope that the Education Committee and the full commission would join me in acknowledging the hard work of staff, the great report that was realized over the last year in the first 2 quarters. And we appreciate what they've done. And we think it's an outstanding job.
They're doing a phenomenal job. They expand capability. Their team working very closely with ITS to improve the system, and they're working with staff to work with OEO, employee relations, and their training system to further improve their reach.
We send this report to media at all?
So, just texting you about that. We'll get it posted on the website and we'll do social media on it. But we did a comprehensive news release in January on the wrap up for 2025 based on the operations reports. And so we did our big kind of training push then. That was a lot closer. This one includes the first quarter of 2026 is like the updates. We'll wait for thing.
We tried.
We try, yes, we try, and we'll definitely get it out on social media, and it'll be in our newsletters and things like that.
Please extend to the staff, the full commission's appreciation.
And if I could just add, as the new person here, I want to commend as well the staff for outstanding work on this side. And a question around the media piece of it. Are there specific reporters that you target in addition to the general blast on social media and the general places?
When we have significant announcements, there's a bunch that I reach out to directly, either through text or phone call. And then Jane also helps out with that. So yeah.
Okay.
And we, in terms of the annual data, a good deal of it is included in the annual report as well. So it gets that kind of coverage. The lobbying data tends to track a lot of attention. And so other things are subsumed in it. But if you look at the annual report, you see a lot of the data is there, not with the texture that's provided here. And I should say, staff would have done that summary, but they're busy getting ready for a presentation to SLMS ethics officer users tomorrow. They're totally engaged as well as conducting training. And we need to get them the help that we've talked about.
Yeah.
All right, so Just let us know if you could. Fair to ask you, when they close the business today, but sometime tomorrow, when you have any questions, that was the best.
Well, let me see on Friday. Had the opportunity to review and submit it. So I think this council would.
Okay.
Legislation committee, there's no report in there, Commissioner Carvalho.
No, no, thank you. Other than that, given already.
Next time, resubmission of rulemaking to adopt amendments to the Commission's outside activity restriction on approval.
Those were submitted previously, but were inadvertently published under the Joint Commission on Public Ethics because the Department of State hadn't changed this form for submission. So they informed me shortly before the 60-day commentary period had ended. So they instructed us to withdraw what our proposal and resubmit under a new form that they sent me last week. That form currently isn't working for me, but we're in the process of getting that done. So we have to resubmit.
But we don't need another vote. We
don't need a vote.
Initiated the rulemaking, but the 60-day period will reset the publication, right, the state register.
That'll be sometime next week.
Yes.
The 60-day period will begin.
For this week.
Okay.
So we did get some comments, what would have been the 60-day deadline. Let submitters know that if they were pressed for time and they have for they now have additional time. Any others have interest in giving us input, which would be much appreciated. They now have.
This meeting is being recorded.
A lag.
It went off for some reason when the recording started, it just stopped recording, so
Monday. It's one of those undocumented.
Media Services has it all uninterrupted, this is our pick.
Commissioner Carvalho?
Thank you. So I just had a question. This is about the owning real estate under an entity name. Is that
That was
what we're
one of
talking about?
Yeah, that was one of the amendments we made to the regulations.
Okay. And I just was wondering if you had seen the comments that we received regarding limiting that provision to entities rather than anyone owning real estate and using it for outside income, and what anyone thought of that.
Yeah,
I think that comment was around my concerns. So I was just wondering if anyone had thought about it and looked at it and had any comment.
We have paid a lot of attention to that. There's been a long-standing interpretation that when the property is owned in the individual's name, and one could readily identify the ownership because of that. It's not going through this LLC or corporate entity. That's not necessary to do that if part of it had to do with the emergence of Airbnb and Vrbo and all these other sites where somebody might be renting out a room in their house, for example.
So the assumption is that if they are renting a property in their own name, that would show they would report that in their financial disclosure statement, and that's how we would see it.
If they're FDS filers, so if they're threshold filers or policymakers, then they would, and there had been something proposal push to raise that threshold to $2,000. We asked them not to do that. For now, that's been deferred, so the threshold is still at $1,000. So it would still be reported by FDS funders. And agencies too could have more stringent requirements as well.
And we'll have time, we'll have a new 60-day comment period, so we'll have plenty of time to consider the comments and deliberate on any changes we might want to make.
Thank you.
Stay close to the comments. But Yeah, we'll post the comments because it would be interesting to see now that we have the extended period, if we get responsive comments. Those that have been submitted. I reinvent Albany, I said.
Yes.
It was, there's several groups.
So
Yeah, on behalf of.
I think that's the only comment we received, so.
We got a couple of other comments from ethics officers.
All right, so let's move on to the next item, which is the comprehensive review.
This is. Next slides.
Oh, do you want to use the slide?
We do.
Okay.
What, do we have them out? We had, at the May meeting, gone through these that have been suggested at a last meeting. I think take a more granular approach to each of the proposals. This is the first group, what we envisioned, 7. We're necessarily have to have 7 sessions to go through the proposals. Some can be grouped together. We had teed up ethics as a lead, as a way of developing a methodology for addressing potential proposals that have come out of it. Again, it's detailed in the longer draft that's under tab F at the back of tab F. Explaining the process. And this is sort of a middle section in what might be conceived of as a comprehensive review, comprehensive report of all the work that has been done. Specific potential proposals had been presented at last annual public hearing. So, getting commentary from various public interest groups, regulators, fields, ethics officers, business groups, and the like, various proposals. Business groups, they have less interest than the good government groups and other associations in the commentary, but nonetheless, we did get some comments in from them. The comments are summarized in the spreadsheet that we included. Seen those previously, by and large, good government groups that have responded generally support, not completely, generally support, but not without exception. And Vice Chair's suggestion in detailing these, give a lot more explanation to each one. And trying to present pros and cons. From staff perspective, we're not really focused on cons. We've taken those into account, putting out the potential proposals, but try to sketch out what some concerns might be. There's some slide.
Could you show me where the pros and cons are?
Yeah, if you go to tab F.
Send them,
Is it the narrative?
send in the narrative.
It's in the narrative.
Okay.
We
Yeah, I saw it in the narrative, but I thought we were gonna lay it out here. It's hard for me to understand that, but it's not.
Well,
It just answers my
the request that we got be too dense to try to squeeze it into a narrative explanation and the pros and cons into a spreadsheet. And I think that's right. We didn't want to be too reductive in how we presented these. So we put them in the narrative. But you do have, to the extent, commentary, so that I can take those concerns into account. But these and all of the proposals, potential proposals that we're going to go through are in context of broad questions that are asked through comprehensive review provision of that section 94, exactly.
Prioritize this list. I guess I walked away with the sense is we were going to look at all of the proposals that came forward.
Right.
Identify, and the ultimate goal of prioritizing. And in the process of prioritizing, that was going to take some time suggesting that if we don't include in the legislative agenda review, the legislative review, that there'd be some recommendations in terms of where it would go.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
So my question is, where is that visual for me? You're saying we didn't do that, we did something else.
No, we're doing that. We're in the process of doing that. There were 63, I think, in total, give or take, potential proposals. And I thought there was a consensus that we wouldn't try to do all of them in one session. It would be
Ethics this time.
it would be just too protracted a discussion, and so we'll break these into groups. So what we conceived of originally was using ethics as the starting point for methodology. And then our next set of proposals to consider, a larger group, frankly, lobbying and FDS, which we teed up at the last meeting, but we decided to go back to go to this more narrative format with pros and cons. So we'll do ethics, see if this works, both in terms of specific proposals, whether we'll advance them or not. Some we have advanced, in fact, just talked about.
So you went to the
Changes
entire
might lead
63, went to the entire list, pulled out the ethics.
Out of the 63.
But it's the ethics, and now we are prioritizing the ethics.
I don't think we're prioritizing it. The commission as a whole is going over each of the proposals. We're discussing each of the proposals.
Okay,
And then subsequently, we will prioritize.
okay.
So for the purposes of today's discussion, are we discussing these 6 ethics proposals?
Yeah.
And as a body, we will reach some determination about if we want to go forward on all 6. We may decide we don't want to do that, as I understand it. And then of the 6, whichever ones we want to go forward, we may have some discussion about how to prioritize those items. But it really is first to review all 6, determine which ones we want to go forward.
Right. Exactly, and hopefully we can pick up more momentum as we move forward from session to session, so that it's not expanded. 7 subjects, we agreed to use the structure of the agency as sort of. But all of the proposals, all 63, are within the framework of a comprehensive review mandate. And the question is whether our system of ethics and lobbying regulation is effective and what changes should be made. And there's the harmonization question that's asked in the statute as well. And specific to ethics, because we framed it that way, is the current system providing advice and guidance, preventing conflicts of interest, post-employment violations effective, and what changes should be considered. And there may be some, cross-pollination, harmonization that needs to be done. Things like financial disclosure, like compliance audit and review that also favor the citizenship. But with respect to specific guiding questions on ethics, because we're trying to frame the discussion a little bit next. We had 3 guiding questions that And again, we put these out in the public hearing as well. As the time arrived to reassess formal guidance that's been rendered on recurring issues, including outside activities, job safety, sustainability. Yes, and that nepotism. That includes both regulations and the advisory opinions. Part of the comprehensive review process was the master class that Michael Sand conducted on the body. 400 formal advisory opinions that various ethics agencies have issued. Second question was, should regulations be promulgated for recurring issues for which there are formal and informal guidance opinions, but currently no substantive regulations? And an example would be post-employment issues that come up. We have lots of advisory and informal, but we don't have any specific regulations governing post-employment activities. Third was, this is kind of residual thing that's been kicking around for a while. Prior to ACTRA, informal and formal advisory opinions could be issued in redacted. But now, the statute does not specifically refer to that. We had some discussion about a year ago in the commission about whether those could be redacted. Put out. What that provision restored. You get any traction on that? Comments. The proposals we now have, which are addressed now under tab. First, clarify outside activity approval regulations and inform to require that compensation be disclosed. Either the clarification of threshold regulations. The third is reviewing travel approval requirements in the process for agency heads receiving. These are abbreviations, I should say, the importance of extended advice and guidance, confidentiality. As you've seen in the discussion, confidentiality attaches to inquiries that are made for formal guidance to our advice and guidance or communications systems. But at the agency level where most of the preponderant advice and guidance is taking place, there is not confidentiality. Fifth is to create an ethics officer mentorship program to help promote vigorous application. That's something that is in process. Sixth, to visit the outside activity approval requirements for agency leadership. Parallels the first question, it's subordinate performance to develop a mechanism for uniform handling across all agencies. The uniform activities are strengthened requirements that we impose. Outside activities.
Sandy, we've lost you on the audio. I think you're just too quiet.
Oh.
There may be a paper on your microphone or something, I'm not sure.
How far back do I have to go? Read the slides, and I'll try to speak more loudly. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, thank you.
I apologize.
So why don't we go through them one by one, but let's start with first item, clarify outside activity approval regulation. Form to require, or for employees, clarify outside activity approval regulations. Which is behind.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So I had a hard, thank you. I had a hard time understanding from the written summary what exactly this proposal was. Is this just requiring outside activity forms to list the expected compensation for an outside activity? Is that all proposal number one is?
That's one, among other things.
Among other things, okay.
To require that. The commission in its resolution 2302, in addition to requiring agency heads, similar, like an official requests for guidance to be effectively shared with the commission before their issue, also established a threshold.
Exactly says
20.
says
2302. So if an individual is maybe going to receive their salary from their outside activity or in excess of $50,000, whichever is less, they also have to come to us. We had not been requiring disclosure of the anticipated compensation. They only have to say, the applicants only have to say that they're going to exceed the threshold, which generally is $5,000 above. For certain individuals, it's $1,000 threshold because they have no agency. It's an agency approval process go through.
And we do think that compensation is a relevant fact to get from applicants for outside activity approval.
I have a couple of concerns.
So,
I appreciate that it sort of, it gives you a sense of how a person's priorities might shift, if they're gonna make a lot of money from their outside work or not. But I think there are also some concerns because some work just pays more than others. And so if you're doing outside work as an attorney, you're gonna make a lot more than if you're doing outside work doing seasonal help at Walmart. And, you know, I think we can get into some, oh, well, he's gonna be making $10,000, she's only gonna make 50, that judgments that aren't necessarily relevant. And then there's also the matter that some people enter into outside work not knowing quite how much they're gonna make. They may have an idea of what their rate is going to be, but you don't necessarily go into it knowing exactly what kind of hours you'll have or how much money you'll make. So I think I probably want to see a little bit more granularity about this.
The anticipated compensation would be one factor among many that we would consider. So if someone were to earn a substantial fraction of their state salary, it wouldn't automatically mean that approval would be denied. We would consider it in the context of all the circumstances. Second point.
Well, they might not know going into it, and there could be a procedure. There's the requirement for pricing your agency annually if you're continuing to, not us necessarily, but your agency if you're continuing to engage in the activity. And if either your responsibilities or your outside activity changes in a material way, you have to reapply. But the concern is compensation may be an indicator of how much time to your attorney. Well,
That's asked for,
we do now, yes.
but not in the regulations. So that's another addition we would make to the regulations to make that official. And also, if someone couldn't specify an exact amount, we would ask for their best estimate and go forward based on that.
I have another question in this room.
Sure.
Thanks. Would this create a duty to update if the actual earned compensation is higher or substantially higher than what was predicted on the form?
Could you repeat that, Vice Chair?
Yeah, so what happens if somebody says, I expect to make $10,000 and then it turns out that their new business is a smash hit and they're actually making significantly more than that? Do they have to come back to us?
Oh, I mean, that would be a question, but that could be part of the proposal. Yes, if there's a material change in your outside activity, and materiality could include substantial change in the income you're earning from it. And there could be a difference. You could write a book that turns out to be a bestseller and be vast amounts of money from it, even though your effort hasn't changed. Or you might be required to spend substantial amounts of time away from your job doing, are there talk shows still left late night? If they still have those, doing interviews on late night talk shows, book sightings and that kind of thing, that take you away from your job. We've always had the concept of conflict. But the question is whether the form is sufficiently probing. If we see somebody coming to us who says they want to work 70 hours a week at any occupation, we at least ask the question, we generally defer to the, not always, generally defer to the agency, making sure whether the employee is going to be able to keep up with their job responsibilities and also an outside activity. We also look at situations where someone is taking, and we've talked about this occasionally in commission meetings. Somebody is taking on a responsibility that they think they can generally handle outside of regular work hours. We may have instances that won't be possible. And while on the one hand, individuals are allowed to use their vacation time, their leave time for various things, there is an approval process. And we certainly don't want the fact that activity request to be deemed sort of ability on the part of the employee at will to just decide whenever they want to take time off to execute the activity. It could have an adverse impact on the agency. But having said all of those things, we don't want to prevent folks in state service from supplementing their income or from engaging in other activities. Whether it's accepting some kind of appointment, fighting for some kind of office that won't interfere with their job.
Sorry, Cindy, just related, just to clarify, before when I asked you about proposal 1, you said to include compensation on the form among other things. So is proposal 1, are there other things that we should be thinking about that are part of proposal 1?
Or how much time?
The hours.
The hours. It's not on the form currently.
It's not,
It's on
how much
the
time?
form.
It's on the form. It's not in the regulation.
It's not in the reg, okay.
Sandy, I have a question.
Yes.
The objective is to encourage and increase compliance with the requirement to obtain the outside activity approval. How widespread do we think non-compliance is? And what do we base that on?
I'm not sure that we're saying it's going to improve compliance. I think it's going to improve our ability to analyze these applications on a more granular basis because we'll have additional relevant information. We do include this conflict of commitment language when there are indications in the application that they might have too much of a commitment outside the state job. But we think that this additional information would help us craft our responses better and make better judgments regarding conflict of commitment and being able to give better warnings to the agency when we see a potential issue.
Remember, it's generally, broadly, it's policymakers who are coming to us because that's what the regulation focuses on. I don't know that we're limited to policymakers. I don't know that it's practical to go beyond that. A big part of the uptick in the inquiries that are coming in since ECRA went into effect, but also since everybody's getting ethics training. The policymakers always had ethics training, albeit not annual. It's triennial. Big uptick in the number of outside activity inquiries we're getting. So in terms of Mr. Growing, your question about non-compliance, we think there are individuals who are applying to us now because they now understand the requirement as a result of training, who are asking us to approve activities they're already engaged in. So you're definitely seeing that. We've always seen that kind of thing occur. Somebody finds out that they, probably from their ethics officer, but now from training, that they have this requirement and they're complying now. Our approvals are only prospective. We don't provide passive blessing, so they're still kind of out there.
I have a question. I can't tell if you can see my hands.
I see it.
So my question is, I don't know why.
Yeah, Chris, we don't have detail on that. That's something we haven't really, in our ethics officer surveys, in our other surveys we conducted, comprehensive review. Didn't specifically probe that specific question. Did have
We didn't
have
know
a lot
that
of
far down,
questions on, on compliance generally. I don't recall specific comments, narrative comments coming in on that. That's something we could survey for. It's certainly an important issue.
Commissioner Caravaggio?
Yes. So my question is, and I know this issue has arisen before in considering requests for outside activity. And I think initially our position was that the compensation that someone was receiving really didn't matter or doesn't matter. And I guess your statement, Sandy, that if the effort hasn't changed, meaning the amount of time that the person is engaged in this outside activity, why would it matter how much they are being compensated? Is that going to be a fact? Is that going to be something that is disqualifying in considering these requests?
It's certainly something currently, well, we're not looking at the amount of the threshold. We're looking at the time. But it may be something that merits, if not by us, an inquiry by the ethics officer, and it may merit a caution.
Right. So that's my. So I think I'm sorry. There's a delay, so sometimes I don't know that you finished. So I apologize.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I would not see it as a bar or an automatic conclusion. One would at least want to caution that if there's a wide disparity between the income somebody is earning from their state job and the income they're earning on the outside, that's terrific. But when they're working, their first obligation is to the public and to executing their state job.
Right. So that has to do with the time commitment. I don't know. I'm just saying I don't know that the compensation really is. Of course, the time commitment is important because you have your state job and we want to make sure you're carrying out your obligations there. But I'm just trying to understand why the compensation would be important now because I don't understand why it would be important.
Well, there's another component too, and there's a reason, I believe, the threshold, that 50,000, 50% threshold is in 2302. It could be, if there's a disproportion between the outside activity and the compensation you're earning, that may be something one would want to look at as well.
Just for an example, say state employee were running a private business and earning $100,000 a year, and which exceeds their state salary. Then that would be an indication. We would want to look at that more carefully and see, running a business takes up a lot of time and they may prioritize it because they're making more money through that than they are through the state job. So I think at a minimum, the agency should have that information when they approve the outside activity before we get it. So they can decide if it's even possible for the employee to do both roles.
And if I may, this is Keith St. John, sort of reiterating the point that, and hopefully I'm not misspeaking, but reiterating the point that Commissioner Scott offered several minutes ago, that in the larger context, there may be some value in having that kind of information available to us so that we can more sort of wholly or completely evaluate the totality of the circumstances that may impinge on one's ability to dedicate their time and attention to their primary state job responsibilities.
I understood Commissioner Scott's comment, and maybe I misunderstood it, to be, that it depends on where you are, and what your, what the outside activity you're being hired for is, because again, if you're at a certain point in your career, that's going to be a lot more. That's how I understood your comment, Commissioner Scott, and if I misunderstood it, sort of like, so it's irrelevant because it's not equal all across. It is it all depends on what your what your credentials are. So
I want
that's
to
what
go
I
back.
understood her to mean.
Are you finished? Are you finished? I want to go back to Vice Chair Ayer's question. I mean, you may be looking at the compensation, but in the context of other things, what are the other factors that we want to consider when we're looking at the outside activity?
Yes, the primary factors would be the nature of the state duties and the nature of the outside activity to determine if there's any potential for a conflict between the two.
And you said time, how much time we're going to?
How much the time commitment for the outside activity.
So before we consider this, I think we need to have a list of all the factors that we're looking at. To identify.
Yeah, I mean, but certainly before we would articulate a proposal, we would do that. And there are studies that have been done, underlying legislative law 5B, which currently subject Gil will talk about. There are studies that have been done, proposals that have been made, not with respect to workforces generally, perhaps, but certainly with respect to legislative officials on the impact of outside activities, evidence of which is outside earned income. It's been pointed out, it's not always the same question between dollar amount and activity or the nature of it. We can come back to specifics.
I think we should. Right? Would that help address your concern, Vice Chair?
Sorry, I had a little trouble hearing. Is it you're suggesting coming back with a list of what the factors are that we'd be asking for?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would make it much easier to form an opinion about. Thank you.
Commissioner Gronway?
I just want to be clear. It seems like I'm hearing there's several issues here that it seems we have a requirement in the resolution that's not any place in the regs. We've got the form that may not match the regs that are out there right now, and that there's different sources of information relative to this process in different places, and that gives rise to confusion. I think that is underlying some of this. But it also seems that one of the objectives is not only to help this agency when it's evaluating these requests, but most importantly, the employing agency in the first instance, to have a real clear understanding of what the potential conflict of commitment could entail. And that is where these other facts come into play. So it seems to me, the suggestion that we get I would start with getting a list of the multiple sources out there with the objective of making sure we've included everything that is relevant in the various places now, to have that be the basis for the list of what we want to make sure we do. And then if we decide this is appropriate, make sure we're consistent in each forum, that the regs and the form and anything else are consistent, because there's no reason to have, subtleties anyplace, because that's going to lead to confusion. So I support the suggestion that's been made. And it sounds like it could be a good idea, because clarity is always going to be our objective. Clarity is the key to compliance, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we can do that.
Let's move to the next part. Clarify the gift threshold regulation.
Correct. Currently, our guidance is that nominal value is $15 or less. Above $15. A thing given to be a gift, subject to the regulations. There have been proposals to raise that threshold. There have also been questions raised as to the clarity of that requirement. Generally, and there are lots of exceptions to it. The threshold is something that's applied to food beverages. It's not clear if it applies across the board. As we point out, there's always going to be evaluation questions with respect to something that's given or something that's solicited or demanded. But setting that aside, and we have a kind of bright line test that applies across the board. Again, so we have uniform. We have regulations that prescribe. We don't have formal procedures for getting, accepting or giving a gift. Anybody who comes within our jurisdiction can come to the advice and guidance unit and ask questions, and we do get questions about whether something will be given or accepted. But apart from that, it's a self-enforced system of regulation. And I think because of that, it behooves the agency to have as much clarity as possible on what is a gift, what isn't a gift. And as I said, saying the discussion of it, there are lots and lots of exceptions. And of course, before something becomes prohibited, there has to be an assessment one way or the other, depending upon whether it's an interested source or not an interested source, of whether there's an intention to influence the individual. You can probably have greater clarity on that circumstances. One can better gauge whether there's an intent to influence.
Is there a sense that we ought to clarify the gift regulation, threshold regulation?
Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Goldman.
I can say as a former state employee for many years, this whole threshold has been the subject of what I think are needless conversations about a cup of coffee and the like. And it has the effect, I think, of really confusing. The ultimate goal should be that there should be no gifts that are intended to influence, period. And sure, most nominal value things won't do that, but leaving such an amorphous concept out there, I think just leads to these conversations that miss the point. So I would clearly support a very, very low dollar threshold. I mean, $10 would be fine, and I don't worry about inflation. The bottom line is, the goal is to discourage gift giving. And maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but anytime I was in the role of an agency ethics officer, I said, here's a real simple test. If the thing you're giving you don't want, chances are it's nominal value. You know, if you're given a little fan or something, you just don't want it. It's the kind of thing you're gonna leave behind and, you know, but if it's something you really want, chances are it's got some real value. And that, I know there's no dollar amount on it, but it's a simple, common sense way to think about these trinkets you can be given. But it seems to me, I'd put a low value in there. I would make it so that the default is, I'm sorry, I can't accept it. And most people who really are well-versed in the ethics law, that's what they'll say, is that, you know, you're out to lunch with somebody saying, I'd take you to lunch, but, you know, we can't do that. And it's like, of course we can't do that, you know? So I'd make it simpler, and I'd put a very low dollar threshold on it.
It'd just be an absolute prohibition? Is that easier?
I don't know if it has the effect of an operation working to be a prohibition, then so be it. But I don't see the harm in that. Why, you know, in the early 80s, before there were any of these express requirements, as I recall, you know, the gifts that were floating around were real gifts, you know, tickets to the US Open, that kind of stuff. And all, you know, that was unquestionably wrong. But then you get these newer requirements, well, not new anymore, but these requirements, and that's what led to what I always thought were the silly conversations about cups of coffee. And this is before there was a $10 latte. You know, I mean, it misses the real purpose of this requirement. We don't want gifts, because if it's a genuine gift, it's given for the purpose of influence. If you are such close friends with somebody that you want to give them a gift, you've done that in a very separate context, not the kind of thing that is really problematic. So I think it should be made simpler and unequivocal.
Could I say something?
Yes, Vice Chair.
It's sort of along the lines of what Commissioner Grunwagen said. Yeah, first, strongly agreeing with what I think Sandy was saying. No state official should ever have to figure out what the phrase nominal value means. So I'm strongly in favor of us doing something that clarifies that. I don't think any speaker of the English language should have to figure out what nominal value means, but we certainly should be able to save our stakeholders from doing that. The other question is, it looks to me, and this is a question really, as if the law allows iteration of so-called nominal gifts, right? In other words, if we were to raise the threshold to $25, then a lobbyist could buy a public official lunch every day of a month, as long as each lunch was under $25. If that's correct, then it strongly supports keeping the limit much lower than $25. Is that correct?
No, those we aggregate. We don't aggregate everything, but meals we do. Food and beverage.
That would violate Public Officers Law 74. Multiple gifts go beyond the gift prohibition, and it would go into, you know, an actual attempt to influence.
But it wouldn't violate 73.
It would not necessarily violate 73, but it would almost certainly violate 74. But we could make it clearer in 73 that multiple gifts that add up to above the nominal value are also prohibited.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Thanks.
I think having bright line rules and specific dollar values has to be beneficial to everyone.
And clarity.
And clarity.
Consistency.
Okay, so I think we discussed that.
We could move forward,
Well, then,
more specific.
okay. December, if I'm not right line. The next item, review travel approvals for agency heads.
Well, this is on, it's number page 25. This is something that the commission has been kicking around for a while now. Whether there should be, at this to the point of clarification, whether there should be just a simple, straightforward prohibition of accepting travel-related expense reimbursement or payment from any source other than professional membership association that the agency is a member of. So eliminate commercially sponsored conventions, gatherings of one kind or another, seminars, that kind of thing. It's important to know. I'm not saying I advocate this. It's important to know that agency head or senior officials participate in the event. Then it ought to be something that the agency wants to do. And a predicate under our Part 931 regulations is that the agency would pay. So certainly under our regulations has to advance the interests of the agency. It has to be something the agency wants to do. But would the agency want to spend its own precious resources on sending senior official or an agency head to the event if it had to pay for it? Opposed to having a third party pay for it. And underlying that is the question whether it's fair to assume that no entity is going to pay wants to sell something to them, persuade them. The other side of it is lots of these gatherings, get-together, conferences, conventions, convocations, where important information is important. And it may well be that the sponsors, whether they're not for profit, or commercial entity, or a membership association, may well be that they want to push a particular point of view, get certain information out. Should that in and of itself, if there's no specific decision that they're trying to encourage a public official to make, or there's no past action the individual mistake they want to reward, that's not present, is an objection. I mean, generally, if it's not an interested source and the requirements of the regulation are met, it's related to the work of the agency. The individual is only being compensated for the time they have to be at the event. They're not being provided with any other perks unrelated to attendance at the event. And the amounts are reasonable, so it's not lavishly overspent. Under the regs, the activities are booked.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Do we look at the amount of travel any agency head is engaging in? I'm just curious. I think that is an issue we should look at, as well as the purpose of the travel expenses. Is that something we keep track of? I'm curious to know.
We don't formally keep track of the frequency of travel. There are some agency heads who travel fairly frequently, and there are some who I think probably don't travel at all. But I think it's largely a reflection of the nature of their position. The Department of Health, for example, I think is very involved in national organizations and learning new things all the time. So we know, the answer is no, we have not tracked frequency. We've relied on the judgment of the agency heads to
Okay,
decide.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, thank you.
But the reimbursement, if it's over $1,000, has to be reported. If it's the same organization and it aggregates $1,000. The proposal that was out there in the last legislative session would have raised that threshold to $2,000. And one of my concerns was the sweet spot for many of these outside activity requests is between $1,000 and $2,000. And those would have dropped off FDS disclosure. That's, again, the guidance we're giving is confidential. We're not publishing it. We can't. The statute doesn't permit us to. Individuals are all policymakers. Obviously, they have to disclose those reimbursements on their financial disclosure forms.
I just wanted to reiterate, I believe Executive Director Berlin did say it, but staff doesn't support this proposal. So we just want to make that clear. We believe that the travel approval process currently is sufficient for allowing us to make determinations based on various factors as to whether to approve the travel reimbursement.
I have a comment when there's time.
Yes, there's time.
Thanks. So my view, for whatever it's worth, is that there's two issues. I wouldn't support a general prohibition on outside payment for travel. I don't think that's the right answer, but I do think that the regs as currently written are confusing. I've spent some, in order to know which of two multi-part tests one should apply, one has to first decide whether there's an interested source, which is itself an analysis that needs to be gone through. And I've had some experiences trying to work through these with staff where we spent more than half an hour only to realize we were in the wrong section of the regs. If we had that experience, I suspect members of the public might as well. So I do think that the analysis is too complicated. I also think that the current regs are too permissive for outside payments from non-interested sources, in the sense that if there's an environmental advocacy organization that doesn't do lobbying in New York State and isn't an interested source, but they want to pay for a state official to travel to give a speech on environmental issues, then I think that a member of the public could reasonably think that the advocacy group is hoping that the official will speak in a certain direction, and that the trip is sponsored by an advocacy organization. You have a situation where a public official is giving a speech that's sponsored by a group that clearly wants the speech to have certain content and not have other content. So my view would be, I think staff refers to this in the papers that we have as a positional conflict, as opposed to I'm not sure what the term would be for the kind of conflict that's prohibited by the current regs. But my view would be that kind of conflict is also significant because it undermines public trust that officials are sort of speaking effectively without sponsorship from outside or from advocacy groups.
What if the agency had made a determination that the policy being advocated by the organization is something that would be beneficial to the agency and they support the proposal? Or if they go and, if they could also decide they don't support it and go and speak against it.
Right, well, then I think, I mean, in the second case, I'm not sure what I think. In the first case, right, I assume and hope that that's what would always be happening, that the agency has decided to accept the sponsorship because it's in their interests for their public mission. I still think there's an appearance of impropriety issue. I still think you don't want public officials having their expenses paid for by advocacy groups and then giving speeches that are in line with the advocacy group's mission. I think that undermines public trust, regardless of whether the agency is in fact making its own independent judgment that the speech is right.
I understand your position.
So,
Carabao?
yeah, so I think I think we should explore it more and consider what the proposed amendments might be. And I understand that staff doesn't agree with it, but I understand, I hear what Vice Chair Ayers is saying, and I can think of specific instances where this has been an issue in making in considering an application. So I would request that we explore it further. Thank you.
I mean, I will say, I mean, and I see it as a big con, is sponsoring groups may well have advocacy positions that they want to push. But that doesn't mean that it's not helpful for the individual or the agency overall in performing their responsibility to hear that view. It doesn't mean they're being programmed just because somebody's paid for, travel and lunch or dinner or a hotel. And the downside of cutting that off is that potentially useful information may be lost.
Well, maybe we could just have a short discussion in executive session to discuss how this has been has created a little conflict or a little uncertainty, and then decide if we want to take it on. I don't think we can discuss it in public session with examples of why it might be an issue.
Mr. Karas?
That's a gal.
Mr. Grover, did I see your hand raised before?
Yeah, but I think Commissioner Carabao addressed my concern.
All right, thank you. All right, so we'll take another look at this. And come up with some proposals, and we'll discuss them later in the examples. Next item is extended advice and guidance confidentiality.
As explained currently statutorily, informal advice and guidance sought from staff closed with statutory confidentiality. The Commission has recognized advisory opinion that there can be exception to that, it's effectively waiver where individual misstates guidance the agency has given. It becomes important to clarify that whatever's been attributed to it is inaccurate. But other than that, the communications are protected, and the reason for having that confidentiality is to encourage individuals to seek advice and guidance from the agency, either so that they can correct a conflict if they've got one, or avoid a conflict if one is about to happen, or give or accept a gift they shouldn't be accepting or giving, taking on post-employment. Something else that they're prohibited from taking on, without fear that they'll either be criticized publicly for it or prosecuted for it. But with the exception of very limited class of individuals, policymakers who are seeking advice first have to vet their issue with their agency ethics officer or the designee of their agency head. That's a requirement of the regulations for outside activity approval. It's also a Part 931 requirement. It's also an honorarium. But those communications are not protected. So there's an anomaly that part of that stream of communication is not protected. And if the reason for communications with us to be protected is to encourage candid discussions to avoid or rectify conflicts of interest. The fact that there is no confidentiality, they just cut off that whole process and make it unavailable to individuals concerned about it. We can talk about, do we think there's under compliance with regulations? Conceivably, there is, and that's one of the reasons for it. Individuals aren't protected. The other side, it's been pointed out, is if agency ethics officers aren't permitted to disclose those kinds of communications, they could have an ongoing violation of their agency that they can't report to agency leadership. And that puts them in a very, very difficult, potentially untenable position. I think staff has a mixed position on this.
I think it's a genuine issue, and we definitely need to study it further, because there is a balance to be made here between protecting confidentiality and protecting the right of the agency to know.
Mr. Karas?
I agree with that, and I'm looking at it from the point of view of an agency ethics officer and thinking, I mean, number one, as an agency attorney, you are always representing the agency, not the individuals. And I just think it could put an agency attorney / ethics officer, like nobody would want, this is just my off the cuff, like who would want that job, So I think we have to be very careful, when we look at this, but it's just fine.
Well, maybe one word we haven't studied it is to encourage individuals who have those concerns to come to us first. We don't, that's not the guidance we give. Our public position always is contact us or your ethics officer in kind of the home base, because there are far more of them than there are of us.
Right.
Go to your ethics officer, and plus your ethics officer's on the ground. You can offer hopefully more
So,
proposing to do what your agency does.
Mr. Karas?
yeah, I think the fact that, I mean, the ethics, I think the solution would be to have the ethics officer refer them to us if there's something they want to, that they must, divulge that they're concerned about whether or not it's confidential. I think the burden to the ethics officer, as Commissioner Karras said, is greater. Because we must have those on the ground ethics officers there. I think it would put them in a bad position and make them reluctant to take this job. I think I mentioned that some ethics officers, even without us putting in the accessorial liability, or even though that's not part of the regulations yet, still feel conflicted about like don't tell me anything you don't want me to have to talk about. So yeah, I kind of agree with Commissioner Karras on that one.
So as part of the further study, would you be reaching out to ethics officers?
We got one comment at the annual public hearing. It was from an ethics officer who supported it. But that's one ethics officer who did not. I don't believe we included that question in the surveys that we done.
We didn't get into specific proposals in any of the surveys. It was more of a general, taking the temperature, what were the biggest issues, what were the biggest
Yeah.
problems, so we could figure out how to solve it.
But that was the only comment. Good government supported 2501, the waiver. But weren't key on this.
So I don't think, we're not gonna come to a conclusion on this.
Further study.
Which is sense, right?
Could I say something as well?
Yes.
Thanks. I just want to say, if staff thinks that the proposal is worthy of further study, then that's completely fine with me. I just wanted to say, I think in terms of how we handle these issues generally when they come up, if there's a proposal and there's actually nobody in the room that supports it, then I wouldn't, let me say separately, I hope that we're keeping a list of where these proposals go so that we can at a later point revisit and prioritize. And if in fact nobody supports a proposal that's in front of us or says, I think this needs to be pushed further, nobody on staff, none of the commissioners, then I'm not even sure it needs to be on this list. But if staff thinks this is a proposal that's worthy of further study, then we should absolutely keep it on the list. I also wanted to say, sorry, just briefly, that if I'm right in thinking that this would be a legislative change required to implement this proposal, then whatever list we put it on, I think should flag that it would probably go to Commissioner Caraballo's committee in the event that it resurfaces.
Yes, if it were a change, legislative change, but it's also possible that maybe we want to fine tune our messaging. I'm not exactly sure what we would say, because currently our messaging in our trainings and in all the information we put out is, if you have a question about whether what you're doing is appropriate or not, contact your ethics officer or contact us. And we don't draw the distinction between the consequences of one versus the other. And if going to the ethics, if an ethics officer is going to say, watch what you say to me, because you're talking to your agency leadership, maybe ethics officers in those situations should be sending the individual to us.
They have to do that anyway under professional responsibility rules. That's a basic PR thing. If you represent a corporate entity and a person comes to you asking for advice, you have to clarify that you don't represent them.
If you're a lawyer in that position, yeah, acting.
Well, I was assuming agency ethics officers were lawyers. Maybe I shouldn't have assumed that.
I believe most are.
Okay.
There are exceptions to that. But understood. But our messaging doesn't draw that distinction.
Right.
And maybe not, but something we want to take a look at. I think this is an issue that's worth addressing.
All right, so we'll come back to that.
We'll look at that issue at least.
Next item is create an ethics office and mentorship program.
It's in progress. We're working on that now.
So we're doing that.
Yes, it's going forward.
And the next item is clarify outside activity approval regulation.
I think we pretty much covered this in the discussion.
Yeah, I wasn't clear if that was different from
There is a That said, in the proposal, in terms of procedurally what we're doing, I guess we'll do the same thing when we come back in September, taking up the next group of potential proposals. So that would be lobbying and financial disclosure.
Lobbying There are a lot of,
Yeah, there's a lot
There
of.
are a lot.
so maybe we'll start in September lobbying.
Do the first half for the.
There are quite a few.
I found this very helpful, laying it out, type of discussion that took place as well,
That would be,
as you move forward with the next tranche.
and we're just trying to, I had this vision, you would finish this, 2026.
I need to redo your visions.
I didn't want to be negative for your visions, I left it alone.
We'll get there.
Very new or other business.
Wait, I'm sorry, we had trouble hearing the last exchange, and I guess I'm not completely clear on what happens to these proposals that we just discussed now that we've discussed them.
I think there were 3 that we agreed with. Some amplification on one of them. Others were going to be, they're going to come back to us. But we're going to discuss, make that discussion.
Correct, and in terms of the end product of the building. Gesundheit, we'll have a number of proposals that the commission would be advancing, or already advancing, as the case may be, as part of the comprehensive review process. And I think we'll likely have others that will remain under consideration. As we go through the process of, looking at the effectiveness of the regulatory scheme, the advisory opinions, regulations, and statutes are working in harmony and effectively.
Maybe.
I do
Here, like here.
I think Emily and I have a,
Yeah, well, we can put them in categories, so that will know like which ones are okay to move forward, and then which ones further studying, which ones.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Right.
that sounds like the answer. Thank you.
He was saying, we'll send them out to us.
Okay,
And just to
great.
be clear, it's status, what we decided on each of the proposals
Yeah,
here
right.
in the next step. Okay, got it.
Great, thank you.
No, we were just talking about, the sound is up,
You're right.
down.
And we're
So
looking
when Sandy, when you're looking down, then that's why it's not carrying up.
That's when it's hard for them to hear, and it's
I know,
when you're
but-
looking over your glasses, actually,
That's
I
right.
noticed. You're looking over your glasses, so always look through your glasses. Let me show you.
That's right. We're in the ceiling.
I'll look up to you, okay.
That was beautifully audible, actually.
Thank you. Is there any new or other business? Then a motion to do executive session. All right, we're going to executive session. Let's take 10 minutes
Thank you.
Thank you.
and we'll come back at 12:10 to executive session. Okay?
Thank you.
So we're reconvening the public session of the public meeting of July 20th. I'd ask Executive Director Berlin to give us a readout of what was conducted during the executive session.
Thank you, Chair James. In executive session, the commission discussed matters related to litigation and legal advice. The commission discussed personnel matters. The commission discussed the formal opinion pursuant to Executive Law, Section 94(7)(c). The commission discussed the substantial basis investigation report and a potential settlement agreement. And the commission authorized steps in several investigative matters, closed 7 investigative matters, and discuss several other investigative matters. Thank you.
Is there any other business? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And Commissioner Kara, second. All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye, everyone.